Welcome back, Defenders. Today we're going to start with the good news for Ukraine. And the Pentagon has confirmed they will use all remaining funds for Ukraine support before Biden leaves office on January 20th. The Pentagon plans to utilize approximately $6 billion in remaining Ukraine support over the next 2 months. 2 months divided by $6 billion is nearly $700 million worth of military aid every single week. So Ukraine's going to get a huge boost in military support this winter. Then we'll head into the uncertainty period once Trump takes office after January 20th. The United States also announced they're going to rush deliver about 500 interceptor missiles for the Patriot and NASAM systems. This should help Ukraine protect their energy grid this winter. And now that the election is over, the United States has reversed their policy on allowing the deployment of military contractors to Ukraine. Military contractors are not uniformed soldiers, but many of these people are maintainers, and they have expert knowledge on all the weapon systems we've delivered to Ukraine. So these contractors, they're paid very well. They're going to immediately start deploying to Ukraine to help with maintenance and logistics and training or whatever. So what's the last remaining big thing that the Biden administration can do pretty soon? And I do think they are going to approve long-range strikes of both ATACMS and potentially JASSMs 300 kilometers deep into Russia. This is the week to apply political pressure on Joe Biden to reverse this policy. The reason why is there's no risk of escalation management. If the Russians think that Donald Trump will give them favorable terms in any kind of negotiation, they're not going to start a nuclear war. There will not be a nuclear war the next 2 months. So if this was Jake Sullivan's concern for denying the use of long-range strikes, it's gone. This is the week to apply political pressure to get this position changed by Joe Biden. And I want to share this tweet from the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Lithuania. Putin never escalates when we help Ukraine. He escalates when we don't help enough. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of things changing over the next 2 to 3 or 4 months. And it's a wait-and-see policy. Nobody knows what Donald Trump is going to do, and nobody knows how Vladimir Putin will react. So now that Trump has won, he's won. He's defeated all of his enemies here in the United States. This was not a contested victory. MAGA controls the Supreme Court, Congress, and the White House. When you have all the power, you have all the responsibility. So everyone now is calling and trying to talk to Trump to tell him what the actual geopolitical position of the United States is. Biden will make the case to Trump's team for Ukraine aid to continue. Donald Trump, I think on Wednesday, will be going to the White House. Joe Biden is going to welcome him for a peaceful transfer of power. And the Biden team is going to meet with Trump's transition team and explain to them the reality. Why is this the position of the United States? How does this benefit the United States to continue militarily supporting Ukraine? It's different when you're a candidate and you don't have any responsibility for what's happening in the world. But as soon as you take the oath of office, as soon as you're appointed by Congress, it's now your responsibility. And I do believe that workers will be contacting the representatives. The CEOs of defense contractors will want to meet with Trump and talk to him about how all this money being spent as military aid for Ukraine actually benefits workers and benefits local communities in states that Trump won. There is huge defense industry in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio, Iowa, Arizona. Does Trump really want to turn his back on all these people? turn his back on American taxpayers, American industry, to help the Russians, and I'm struggling to believe this will be the reality. Victory for Russia and Ukraine would threaten U.S. global interests. The European Union is America's largest trading partner. There's over 1 million American citizens living and working on the European continent. It is not in America's best interest to abandon our Western allies, to show preference to Putin and the Russians. These are the conversations everyone in America and Europe are going to be having with Trump's transition team every single day. And then there's the question of Congress. This is important to remember. The military aid bill for Ukraine passed in Congress last May. It passed in the Senate 79-18. This was a supermajority. In the House, it passed 311 to 112. It's easy to just vote against something when you have no responsibility. People were voting against this bill because they thought Trump wanted them to vote against it. But now that Trump is in charge, and these are his taxpayers, his voters benefiting, this is going to be difficult for the Trump transition team to ignore. Trump team disavows advisor's stance on Ukraine territorial concessions for peace. So yes, my position leading up to the election was based on things that Trump supporters said, people that Trump chose to surround himself with. But nobody speaks for Trump except Trump. And Trump's already saying anybody talking about territorial concessions is speaking prematurely. The reason why is Trump doesn't give anything up unless he gets something. In order for Crimea to be internationally recognized as Russian territory, Ukraine would have to agree that, but Trump's going to want something first. And I don't even think Trump knows what he wants at this time. He has 2 months to think about it. So we can't really talk about what Trump will do. That's what you do. You speculate when somebody's a political candidate. Going forward on this channel, what I'm going to do is I'm only going to talk about and respond to what Trump actually does. Even sometimes what he says you can't even take serious. So there was leaked in the last couple days a rough draft of Trump's peace plan, including deploying European troops to a buffer zone. And this is a rough draft. This is a first idea. Trump doesn't have a plan to end this war. He never had a plan to end this war. He's coming up with it right now. And this idea of creating a DMZ, that would be 1,800 kilometers long, 1,100 miles, not even counting the border with Belarus, which Russia did invade Ukraine from Belarus in February of 2022. So to put this in perspective, where is there a successful demilitarized zone in the world? And it's the Korean Peninsula. But it's only 250 kilometers long, 160 miles. This isn't practical. And for Trump to demand or expect European militaries to deploy to keep the peace, why would Europe do that? Why would they listen to Trump when Trump's not even willing to send American soldiers to help enforce this new DMZ? These are rough draft ideas. Nothing is final. This isn't going to work. Trump's team mulls postponing Ukraine's NATO membership for at least 20 years. This was also floated as an idea. I do think that the Trump team is deliberately leaking some of these ideas to test them, to see how international actors react. And I don't understand this idea. If NATO expansion and NATO aggression is why Russia was justified in invading Ukraine, why would delaying their membership for 20 years be any different? How in 20 years from now is NATO less of a threat to Russia than they are today? So this 20-year number is not random, because Vladimir Putin is 72 years old. It's obvious that There are national security experts, both in Europe and the United States, who are just saying, freeze the conflict, and then wait for Putin to die of old age. As soon as Putin dies, there is no heir apparent. There will be a power struggle in Russia. Maybe Russia will destabilize. And that's the opportunity for Ukraine to get their internationally recognized territory back. Is this a good idea? I don't know. I guess we got 20 years to think about whether or not this is a good idea. So the Russians now have to react to the reality that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. So let's actually listen to the Russians. And what are they saying? Some American publications wrote that Trump is allegedly preparing his own peace plan for Ukraine. How realistic do you think that is? Well, he'll prepare some kind of plan, but it is not about his peace plan, but about what we, the Russian people, need. Consequently, we need the capitulation and demilitarization of Ukraine. Well, then after some time we will discuss on what terms we will sign peace with Europe. That doesn't sound too friendly. So what's being reported, what the Kremlin whispers are saying, is that Putin doesn't want to talk to anyone until he gets Kursk back. The fact that Ukraine, almost 3 months ago now, invaded Russia and has been occupying their territory ever since, Putin's not talking to anyone. He's not negotiating anything until his military can take back this territory. This is ironic because Ukraine has no interest in holding on to any of Russia's territory, but it's a bargaining chip. Give us back something in Zaporizhia or Kherson, we'll give you back your territory in Kursk. Putin does not want to have any talks like that, and this is something that Trump might latch on to, which Putin is aware of. So it's going to be interesting to see what is going to be the dynamic between the Russians and the incoming American government, people who supported Trump. Yes, they cooperated a little bit in order to defeat the Democrats, in order to bring down Joe Biden. But these people are now in direct opposition because they do have conflicting interests. So this was an interesting choice from Kremlin State TV. I can't show you this clip. I'll link it down below because they show Melania Trump naked. For some reason, to congratulate Trump, they dug up all of... Melania used to be a supermodel. She did some nude modeling. And on Kremlin State TV, to their national audience, they decided to show Trump's wife's naked photographs. Interesting choice, Russia. I don't know if that was meant to be a compliment. Like, Russian culture is a little bit different here, but normally blasting on national television to your audience naked pictures of someone else's wife, yeah, that might upset some certain men. Like, men should have a reaction to that. So here's Soloviev. And once again, now that Trump has won, the tone is kind of starting to shift. We won't bargain about our constitutional territories, but we can discuss with Trump whether we're going to take Berlin. Okay, we're not going to take Berlin today, figuratively speaking. I mean, it's a question of the system of relations. But Trump will demand something different. He has said repeatedly that the most important thing is that there should be no alliance between Russia and China. And he needs to crash the oil price so that it badly reflects on Russians. In no way is he our friend or relative. I think for Trump's supporters who voted for him, it's easy to think that potentially Russia might be their ally, given that they look white, they say they're pro-Christian, they're anti-LGBT, they're tough on immigrants. There are aspects of Russian society that certain Trump supporters, they like and they agree with. You can't really say that for Russia's allies. What about Iran? What about China? These are not Christian nations. Sure, they're tough on the LGBT, but I don't see many Trump supporters identifying with Russia's allies. This is actually the weakest point for Russia. If we want to get Trump supporters to be tough on Russia, remind them every day that they are allied with the Chinese and the Iranians, because the Chinese and the Iranians are not popular among Trump supporters. So these two, Putin and Trump, they have diverging interests, and they've never had to quarrel over these interests because Trump wasn't in power the last 4 years. As soon as Trump gets into power and these two start talking to each other, they might actually realize they don't have a lot in common. And we do have a historical example to draw from here, and that would be Trump's relationship with Kim Jong-un. And this summit held in Vietnam, this was a crazy incident. So Trump met Kim Jong-un 2 times before this, I can't remember. But there was supposed to be this major peace summit in Vietnam in 2019. And Kim Jong-un doesn't fly. So to get to Vietnam, Kim Jong-un had to take his train for like a week. And the summit collapsed. On February 28, 2019, the White House announced that the summit was cut short and no agreement was reached. Trump later clarified that it was due to North Korea's request to end all sanctions. So for some reason in 2019, Trump thought he could broker peace on the Korean peninsula and normalize relations with the North Koreans. And the North Koreans were just lying to him about everything, because that's what fascist dictatorships do. They lie about everything. So Trump got so annoyed, he cut the summit short and he just went home. Kim Jong-un had to take the train for like a week through China, and then he had to take the train home. And he was only in Vietnam for like 2 days. And I don't think Trump has actually spoken to or said anything positive about Kim Jong-un since. So is it possible that Trump could meet up with Putin thinking he can strike up a deal, and as soon as Putin pushes back, Trump just says, this was a mistake. You're not actually negotiating in good faith. You won't give me what I want. This happened in 2019 with Kim Jong-un. It's just weird, guys. So another thing, if you're ever in the comments section and you want to argue with people who are expressing favors positive of Russia, just remind them that Vladimir Putin actually endorsed Kamala Harris. This was covered here on the channel, and if you remember the true meaning, we can just ignore that now. We can take the Russians at their literal word that in the 2024 presidential election, Putin and the Kremlin were supporting Kamala Harris. Here's the quote from Russian Media Monitor. Of course, we have to decide whom to support in these elections. We can't just leave it to chance. This clip is from September. I purposely didn't touch this topic. This is not an option, especially since Vladimir Putin gave us clear directives on as to whom we will now support and why. We're now going to the clip of Putin speaking. I already said that our previous favorite, so to speak, was the acting president, Mr. Biden. So Putin endorsed Biden until he dropped out of the race. He was taken out of the race, but he recommended to all his supporters to support Ms. Harris. So we will do that as well. We will support her. Since this was commanded of Biden, then we must, right? There's now a clip of Peskov. Do you like the way Kamala Harris laughs? He responds, I do now. Every one of us now has to fall in love with the laughter of Kamala Harris. And Trump did mention this endorsement of Putin on the campaign trail.
I knew Putin. I knew him well. And, you know, he endorsed, I don't know if you saw the other day, he endorsed Kamala. He endorsed Kamala. I was very offended by that. I wonder why he endorsed Kamala.
So I'm speaking directly to President Trump because I know he watches my videos. Are you really going to let the Russians get away with this? Endorsing Kamala Harris for president? You should stand up to the Russians for what they did to you. They didn't believe in you, President Trump. So I think an appropriate punishment would be continuing military aid for Ukraine. Just think about it. You got 2 months to think about it, Mr. President. Let's cover other topics. Unfortunately, the Russians executed another unarmed Ukrainian POW on camera. I can't show the video, obviously, but I will link it down below. And this is just who the Russians are. I don't think they're going to get better or change anytime soon. I don't think any election in a Western capital is going to change how they view humanity, how they view human life, whether it's civilians or military, Ukrainians, or even their own. Nobody in Russia seems to care about their own people, their own soldiers. We're getting these videos daily. Here is another video of a Russian soldier filming a plea for help. And this man has just deserted, and he's going to explain the conditions that he survived. I serve in the 123rd Brigade Storm V units. I appeal to the military prosecution and all concerned people. Please help me. I don't know what to do. My commander, Tim, with whom I spoke on the radio, ordered myself and 5 other people to assault. He controlled our movement from a drone and led us to an open area where we started getting effed by Ukrainian drones. Tourists, that's a Russian soldier's call sign, died first. Then I heard pleas for help. Of Mua and Kinzal, these are more call signs. On the radio they said that we need to dig in under a tree and sit and wait for further instructions. Then as I sat under the tree on the radio, I heard Turisk asking for help, asking for a blanket to be dropped, to warm him up or evacuate him. But there was no evacuation. Next day I heard on the radio that Zoma and us were coming towards me. I heard explosions and realized they were under drone attack. I found that Zoma was torn into pieces and us had injuries to his side. Me and us lived under a tree for 5 or 6 days. Tamani joined us too, from the 61st Brigade. Later, a dugout collapsed on him. I stayed with 2 injured guys, Ambal and Troshka, who couldn't walk. My commander Kim gave no Fs about us, didn't send water or food. I don't know how I survived the 2 weeks. I was collecting rainwater, finding bits of food, and in the end decided to leave them because of my command, who I never even saw, said that everything will be fine, that we would be evacuated, but nothing happened. So I left them and walked into some village. I appealed to the military police, to anyone concerned to help me. So this Russian soldier is a deserter, and he's probably going to die. Let's get to the bad news for Russia. Ukrainian drones hit Russian arsenal in Bryansk. 8 blasts reported. We don't have any satellite images yet, but this is the 1060th support center in Bryansk, and Ukraine hit it with drones. Only videos we have are fires in the distance, so we might know more in another day or two. Russia reported they lost another Ka-52 helicopter. The commander is dead and the co-pilot's in the hospital. I don't know if it was shot down or mechanical failure, pilot error. Ukrainian drone pilots kill Russian Major General known for torturing his own soldiers. This is Russian Major General Pavel Klimko. And we can update the list of Russian generals killed during Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Currently, we're at 18 Russian generals and 1 admiral. You're doing great, Russia. Ukrainian drone strike sparks blaze at an oil refinery in Russia's Saratov region. There is a video. in the distance. Hard to say how much the damage is, but we know Ukraine's not done going after refineries and depots. They're going to keep hitting them. There's nothing Russia can do to stop it. Ukrainian drones hit chemical plants in Russia's Tula Oblast. A major Russian defense contractor's facility came under fire from Ukrainian drones. Russia to explore mega oil merger. Russia, none of their oil and energy companies are profitable anymore. And this is more of a rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic move, but they are thinking about merging Rosneft, Gazprom, and Lukoil, all three of Russia's energy giants, together into one big corporation that, of course, Putin and the Kremlin controls. So this is interesting. This is a real-world indicator. No Trump rally for Russian stocks. Here is the MOEX. This is the Russian stock market index. And it didn't see a bump when Trump won. If people thought that sanctions were going to be lifted, or assets were going to be returned, or relations were going to normalize, then investors might feel more confident putting their money back in Russia. These are Saudi investors, Chinese investors, Indian investors, and they didn't do it because they're skeptical about the uncertainty what will happen on January 20th. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. German aid for Ukraine in 2025 safe despite coalition collapse. I don't understand German politics, so I'm not going to attempt to speak on it, but I'm guessing there was some kind of, I guess somebody was fired in the government and then their coalition collapsed. Germany is going to have elections early next spring, so you're up next, Germany. We've had a string of disappointments, but maybe you guys can show the world how it's done. France to send Ukraine new batch of Scalp and Mistral missiles. Thank you so much to the people of France. Final clip I want to play for you is an appeal if any of you feel like donating to a good cause. Last summer, I mentioned friend of the channel, Richard Woodruff, and he was organizing these retreats in the Carpathian Mountains for defenders going through rehabilitation. These are Ukrainian soldiers who have been badly injured or lost a limb. They're spending a lot of time in the hospital, and Richard was organizing these retreats to the mountains so they can get some rehabilitation in nature. So Richard told me that this time they're doing it again, but they're going to have 12 female defenders going through rehabilitation. And let me share with you his video asking for donations.
Good morning, everyone. I'm on my morning jog, and I want to say we are planning to take 12 female defenders to the Carpathian Mountains for a 5-day rehabilitation break in just 10 days' time, from the 20th to the 25th of November. This is another project from Vidnova at MC6 Residence, and we just have $3,000 left to raise to take 12 amazing female defenders from the front lines for a bit of a break in the Carpathian Mountains. They will have psychological and physical rehabilitation, and it will just give them a bit of time to decompress from the front lines. So please, 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 if you can help us support these female defenders from the front, that will be incredible. So дуже велике дякую, and slava Ukraini!
I'll put the link for the PayPal account down below if you're interested. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.